Kneehill County as an authorized employer under that program, and we're just going to make you aware of the changes and how they impact our policies. So these were the first set of changes were specific to the manual, the peace officer manual that came out. And so you'll see on the policy impact side, the different sections in the policy that have been affected and changed to reflect those changes. And if we go through the policies, I can kind of show you exactly where those are. Just kind of continuing with the RFD though, the changes to the program include enhanced authority, additional options. So these enhanced authorities may be added by authorized employers to provide better service to the community and support the police service of that jurisdiction. The authorities available include non-urgent community calls. So these are criminal code for not exceeding 5,000, criminal code warrants, and motor vehicle collisions, and these are investigations. Enhanced authorities require an enhanced education and ongoing training and application to add to appointments through the Solicitor General program. We are not recommending any of these, and the policies do not reflect any of these being added. I did contact the Three Hills RCMP, and he was fine with leaving these off as well. He said many would still likely involve RCMP anyway, so we would kind of be duplicating those services in a lot of those. We just received actually the training just for the investigation portion, and it's a 3-week going to Edmonton for 3 solid weeks in order to take the investigation course. So major expenses and major time away just for that training. So just as a note. And so if we just kind of pull up the policies, I can maybe walk through those policies a little bit better when we're going through all of these different changes, if that's okay with you. Okay, so here we have 820. So there's just some general changes. EMS has been taken out just because we don't respond directly to EMS calls anymore, only through RCMP or fire if they request us. Yeah, so that's kind of the change in number 2, and just a clarification of when on duty is. So a peace officer authority is valid only while an individual is lawfully employed by us as authorized employer and is on duty, performing duties. So if they are out in the public, they are not to be enforcing or seen as a peace officer, even though that's their role in our municipality. So yeah, so that has been added just kind of for clarification. Added the social media policy. That was a change from the program updates. So we've added that. We do have a social media policy already in Kneehill County, so we've just referenced that. Complaints against peace officers. There's a couple of changes again that were happened in the manual that have just been shown here, including the addition of body-worn camera. And the complaint process is directly out of that manual. 5.0, the discipline policy, so that has been added as well as per the changes to the manual. And that is basically just going to follow the Kneehill County procedures. Enforcement officers, so this was a clarification that we put in because we have an enforcement officer bylaw. So I could be designated as an enforcement officer under that bylaw, and this peace officer complaint process would not qualify for me. So just as a just because there's 2 different, but all of our peace officers are enforcement officers. They take the oath, they are, but they would fall under the peace officer complaint process. So just kind of wanted to put that in there so that there's a clarification between the bylaw and what that covers compared to a peace officer appointment is much different, and those complaints followed much different process than what an enforcement officer, if I was the enforcement officer, what that would just be under bylaw, that would be under Kneehill County policy. So. So jurisdiction is one of the ones that was added in here from the manual. So this, well, adjusted, I guess. We did have it in here. So we have included a map at the end of 820 that includes, shows the primary highways throughout Kneehill County. And we've kind of blown up a map. I don't know, could you bring that map up? So at the very bottom there, there's a map of Torrington. This is the only jurisdiction on a primary highway that we have, just right in front of the trailers. Mobile homes, sorry, mobile home section, park. So what I would like to request of council is that we include that jurisdiction and see if we can actually go to the province and expand that from the 2 range roads, just so that there's a little bit more, because as soon as we're on a red line anywhere in there, we have to immediately call RCMP. We are restricted, and if we get too many out of jurisdictions on our authorized employers, SolGen doesn't like that, right? It's a no-no to be stopping people out of jurisdiction. And it's really difficult to stop somebody in that short span. So, we got ya? So that is what I would like to recommend, and I don't know if you would be in favor of that or not, just to change that blue line so it goes. And I did talk to the Olds RCMP, and they have requested that we do that. So they would be part of that business case. They have no problem with us taking that on.
Any comments or questions related to that? Councillor Christie.
So the county or the division for the RCMP is 805?
Yes, it's just on the east side, yeah.
So then you would be looking at the full mile as potentially our jurisdiction, so that if we picked somebody up speeding through Torrington, they would have room to pursue and pull them over.
Yeah, right, correct. Just because the 70 sign starts way back at that acreage to the north. And so it would be lovely to be able to stop people in that area, to slow them down, if possible. And the RCMP of Olds did request that we do that. It's a change on the appointments.
So what would be required from us?
Just to change this jurisdiction map, and then we can go ahead and apply for that.
Okay, so if we change the jurisdiction map, we still have to go through an application process. We're not
Yes, we
automatically.
do. Yeah, in order to get it on their appointments correctly.
Okay.
Yes.
So just a question, if the province or whoever comes back and says no, can we resubmit from the 70 sign to 70 signs, stuff like that?
To adjust that?
To do that, like it still gives them a little bit more room to be able to pull people over, as they're slowing down or whatever. Would that be an option too, if they come back and say?
Yes, no. Yes, through the chair, yes. I think we have a very good business case for this, and the changes to the manual are actually allowing this to happen more, right? They're actually seeing that it is an issue and that this will help municipalities and RCMP as well. So that was the big change in the manual, to allow those a little bit more. Yeah.
Well, and it's not like we're making this request as a revenue generating project, right? Like it's not, our peace officers aren't focused on tickets. They're focused on public safety and education. And so right. When we're making our case, it's not like we found a place to have a lucrative ticket generating. That's not our goal. Our goal is public safety and education. And I think if Olds RCMP is on board with it, I think we could make a pretty solid case.
Okay, that sounds good.
Are there any other questions specifically related to that one? Or
I just have more of a comment.
Votes? Yep.
Just because I live in Torrington, I think this would be a really great and beneficial to that area for sure, because lots of people cross the highway between there, and I've watched people speed through there all the time. So I'm super grateful that that our peace officers would have that ability to at least slow people down.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Okay, and then, like, I just kind of wanted to make clear that we do now, like, we could have a very good business case to actually add all of those primary highways if we so choose. If council so chooses to add all those primary highways, we could. Just so you know that, that's an option now with the new program, manual changes.
so.
But we're not
just bef-
recommending that at this point.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted clarification on.
Yeah,
So we could make a business case to add those, but we're not recommending that at this point in time. You will need a motion from us then to change that jurisdiction potentially in the Torrington, that 1 mile.
yes, if you can just include that amendment to that map, jurisdiction map, in the motion, that would be great. I also did talk to Sergeant Day about the primaries as well, and we don't have the capacity, the peace officer capacity, to take on single-digit highways. Right now, what happens is if we see something very unsafe as we're either crossing that highway, for instance, there was one a couple months ago that there was a vehicle that was losing all of its load, and we did have a peace officer that actually stopped them. The process is because we're restricted on those highways and they're out of jurisdiction, we have to call the RCMP to come and assist for that call. If we had jurisdiction, we wouldn't have to. That's the difference on those highways. But it would also increase the amount, I think, of calls to the RCMP, and that's what they're a little bit leery of, is the amount, because the volume increases so much that they don't have the capacity to come help if we're out there quite a bit. So yeah, so it was a good understanding.
So certainly the RCMP would be supportive of us taking action in a situation like that. And so even though
Yes.
it's an out of jurisdiction call, it shouldn't be that offensive to them if we were to assist in that way.
Right, yes, it's just we have to then report it to Solgen.
Yeah.
But
Okay. All right, if there's no other
Okay.
questions, if you want to continue.
okay, thank you. Let's see what else here. So, and then, sorry, I also added the towns and villages as well, that we could patrol in those areas, and that will be part of the shared services agreements that we will be changing as part of the program as well. Because right now we do have agreements with all of them. They all need to be changed. They all have to be, have a complaint process against peace officers added into those actual agreements. Okay, so 8, it's again just medical first responder activities, just a bit of clarification there. Peace officers may also participate in check stops. We already have that. Those are called JFOs, Joint Force Operations. And, but of course, they're not permitted to actually go and question drivers. They're only there for support. 9 has been added, the known risk policy. We do have a policy already in place, a procedure already in place that is over and above this policy for known risks. That was brought in 2020 following that Lazenby fatality inquiry. Section 10 is monitoring safety systems. Again, we've put that in there just to make sure that the peace officers are following that check-in and check-out. Bylaw enforcement is probably as risky as traffic stops. Telling people what they can and cannot do on their own land is can be a bit contentious, and so we just make sure that they do check-ins and check-outs when they're going to those bylaw calls as well. And body-worn cameras are also being added this year in the budget, so the peace officers are very thankful for that addition. And so that procedure has been added there as well. We have made reference also to the school resource officer, school visits, and just that we need to make sure that we're following their rules for check-ins and checkouts. And then 14 was a records management, and that was a addition to be added. And I believe that records management procedure is going to be being reviewed right now. So we will be making some additions to that, especially because now we have body worn cameras as well. So those will be made to that procedure. 17 was a supervisory review, and that was part of the program changes. And so that is the changes to policy 820. Are there any questions on any of those?
Any questions on 820? Councillor Christie.
I'm just curious on the check-in times, if a peace officer doesn't bring a check or whatever, I know the RCMP after a set period of time, they're called to say, leave it. The peace officers have that same procedure, what is that called?
They do. So we have Lacombe Police Service actually is our dispatch center for them. So we do check-ins every hour. They follow them on a map, like their little cars are on a map. And so they monitor them all the time as they're on duty. And then when, I think it's 10 minutes, check in, check out. So they'll check in at a traffic stop, and then every, I'm gonna say 10 minutes, it might be 8, I'm not totally sure. And then they'll call them, and if not, then they'll call RCMP.
Are you using your mic?
Well, I'm sorry. I know that the RCMP phoned to check it, where those cars, if they're not moving or they haven't heard from an officer. So I wanted to make sure
Yes.
our peace officers have that same security, so.
Yes, we do. That was an addition, part of the safety additions that we have been doing 2 years ago.
Okay, any other questions regarding policy 8-20? Okay, so we're going to amend the motion. So it'll be that county approve policy 8-20, public safety general, with an amendment to section 7 jurisdiction to include the portion of Highway 27 from Highway 805 to Range Road 263. Yeah, sure. With the amendment to section 7 jurisdiction to include the portion of Highway 27 between Highway 805 Highway 27 between Highway 805 and Range Road 263. So that would then expand the jurisdiction on for that 1 mile instead of the portion that's just in front of the. So council approved policy 8-20 public safety general with amendment to section 7.0, I guess it really is in the jurisdiction with the portion with the addition of a portion. The addition of a portion, then take out that two, of, and make that an of. Yep, Highway 27 between Highway 805 and Range Road 263. Mr. Hogan, does that look like it covers it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe it does. Just as a note, we'd be approving the policy. That change that jurisdictional change wouldn't take effect until we'd made the application to the province to have that portion included.
Yeah. So we need to recognize that although we're making the motion to say that that's what we're going to do, we still need that provincial approval. But if we don't make this motion, then that ties your hands in asking
Correct.
for it.
Yes.
Okay. Everybody's clear what we're trying to do? It's clear as mud? Okay. If there are no other questions, I'm going to ask the question, which is, all those in favor? Oh, sorry, no one's made the motion. That's correct. Thank you. Would somebody care to make that motion? Councillor Christie. Getting ahead of myself here. Thank you. I'm glad we're a team here and we work together. Okay, so we have a motion made by Councillor Christie that council approve policy 8-20, public safety general, with amendment to section 70 jurisdiction, with the addition of a portion of Highway 27 between Highway 805 and Range Road 263. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. See, I'm not used to sitting in this chair. It's almost like I was making the motion as I... Oh, sorry about that. All right, let's do 5.3.2, Rocky View County Mutual Aid Agreement.
I just need the other two policies done.
Oh, yeah, the other two policies.
I know. Taking up all your morning.
Yeah.
So just to go over policy 821, not much has been changed in there, just reflecting that the level 2 community peace officers aren't going to be allowed to be in vehicles anymore. And so just kind of making those, reflecting those changes following the program change. And we've also added that community peace officers may undergo additional training as required by Kneehill County. So that aren't specific to the peace officer training, but is something that we would recommend and do training on. So that's that policy.
So question, you said level 2 peace officers will not be in the vehicles anymore. So if we were to hire a level 2 going forward, if there's a need, they will be just on administration duty?
Correct, they would only be allowed to be on administration, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, then I assume there's a motion that should be made here. Someone care to make the motion? Councillor McGee.
I move that we approve policy 8-21, use of force and enforcement tools as presented.
Okay, any other questions on that policy? Okay, if there are none, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve? And that's carried. Thank you. I guess we have policy 8-22.
Yes, and our last policy, just again, some clarification on level 1, level 2. We've added section 1E, traffic enforcement may be conducted in order to protect the motoring public as deemed necessary by the community peace officer. So we've added that. We were getting some requests to help with some funeral processions. And so we've just added that in there. So at the request of a community, and if they're available, they may be able to go and help with those, just as a safety precaution more than anything. So we've added that. And then just again, being able to be called out to injury collisions if requested. We're not the first ones on scene. Just a little bit of clarification on requesting agencies.
Any questions on 8-22? Just some cleanup in there. So we have a motion that would be required there as well. Councillor Christie?
I'll move to approve policy 8-22, traffic pursuit and emergency response as presented.
All right. Any further discussion? If not, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously as well. Thank you, Ms. Grossfield.
Thank you very much. Just as a note, Solgen did approve all of the policies and said that they were very good. So that was done, and so that was nice to get back before we got back to council. So
Good. So I think we have to set up for a public hearing at 9. So so I think we'll take a little break to get organized for that, and then if you don't mind, we'll bring you back later. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to call the meeting back to order. And at this point, I shall call for a motion that the public hearing for Bylaw 1857 be open. So if someone care to make a motion to open the public hearing? Councillor Penner?
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor? Okay, carried. Okay, I'll just go through a little bit of the procedure here. First, I'd like to remind the public that if they wish to speak to the bylaw, that they register their name on the speakers list. And there will also be an opportunity when I've gone through the speaker list that I'll ask one last time if there's anyone else who wishes to speak. First, I would like to introduce the members of council, and I'll start with Councillor Forbes on my right, if you would please.
Carrie Forbes, Division 4.
Laura Michelle Cunningham, Division 5.
Good morning, Debbie Penna, Division 2.
Ken King,
Wade Christie, Division 6.
Faye McGee, Division 1.
very good, thank you. Today's public hearing will be followed according to procedural bylaw 1846, and a copy of that procedure is attached to the package. And if anyone needs an additional copy, that can be found at the recording secretary's desk. I will now ask our planning and development to come forward to make their presentation. And Ms. Randy Hay Morgan, I assume that's you.
Okay. Good morning. So this was put into the Three Hills Capital for June 29th, July 6th, and July 13th. Notices were sent out to adjacent landowners and referral agencies, and it is also on the Kneehill County website. The purpose of this redesignation is to go from agricultural to the light industrial district from the Southeast 223025, which is Plan 0112534, Block A, Lot A, so that should be Lot 1, sorry about that. The applicants recently purchased the property and would like to redesignate the existing building to align with its current use and the property. The structure has 4 bays for rent, 2 are currently occupied. The property has been used for commercial use since 2013. The site is accessed via Range Road 252, which is gravel, and it's approximately 0.5 miles south of Township Range Road 304. The site is approximately 2.5 miles southeast of the village of Linden. And this is just a summary of the location. Planning considerations today is that Kneehill County recognizes the importance of a balanced tax base and to strive to create the opportunities for commercial, agricultural, and industrial tourism growth. Goals to attain the necessary infrastructure to retain, expand, and attract business and industry, to create opportunities that will provide a variety of development options that will diversify and strengthen the county's economy. And lastly, the commercial and industrial uses will maintain high standards for visual appearance and will provide integration with surrounding land uses. The other planning considerations from our land use bylaw and the municipal development plan are that the purpose of the light industrial district is to provide for a wide range of low intensive industrial and commercial land uses in the rural areas, which are easily acceptable. Industrial uses shall be located within a reasonable distance of a primary highway or railway. Industrial uses shall be located and designed so not to create conflicts with adjacent or surrounding land uses through unsightly appearance, emissions, noise, or pollutants, creation of dust or similar disturbances. Industrial uses shall not locate on lands having a potential for flooding, erosion, subsidence, steep slopes, or otherwise containing diverse physical features. And this is just from the land use bylaw. So the top is the permitted uses and the bottom is the discretionary uses. If this is successful in its redesignation, the discretionary uses are the one that would be seen by the Municipal Planning Commission, and the light or the permitted would be the ones that we would issue in home. And here are some site photos. And just one more, and this is showing the parking area to the west of the building, and then just showing the adjacent landowner's property and the proximity to it. And we did not receive any written submissions for or in opposition.
Okay. So does council have any questions for planning? Seems fairly straightforward.
It does.
Okay. I know the applicant's here. Mr. Weave, did you have any comments you wanted to add? If you would like to, we invite you to come forward and make those comments. If you wish not to, that's fine as well. No, I think it's been presented well. Okay, thank you. So this would be the time that I would call on individuals as they speak, as they appear on the speakers list, either in opposition or in favor. However, we have no one on those lists, so we'll dispense with that process. It's also the time I would ask for one last final time, if there's anyone who wishes to speak, this is their opportunity. However, I don't see anyone wishing to speak, so we'll move on from that as well. So last chance for council. Do you have any further questions for the applicant or administration? Okay, I'd like to remind everyone that once the public hearing is adjourned, no further information on the matter shall be received by council. So this is the final opportunity to have that take place. And as I said earlier, it's pretty straightforward, so. All right, seeing no further submissions and no further requests for information, I now declare the public hearing closed, and I'll ask for a motion to go back into the regular council meeting. Councillor Forbes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion to return to regular council meeting. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, Mr. Wiebe, for coming, and I'm sure our planning department will look after you from here on. We will come back to this later in our agenda under 8.0, disposition of delegation and public hearing business. Right, so anybody need a break? Are we good to continue? We're good? All right, so we're going to go on to 5.3.2, which is the Rocky View County Mutual Aid Agreement. Welcome back, Ms. Grossfield, and anytime you're ready.
Great, thank you. So I'm bringing you today Rocky View County Mutual Aid Agreement for Fire Services. So we have a policy that says 1119, signing of agreements, that council is to approve non-operational agreements such as joint agreements with municipalities. Historically, we've worked with other counties and surrounding fire and emergency departments, and they're responding to emergency calls outside our jurisdictional boundaries. The existing Rocky View County Mutual Aid Agreement is from 2004, and so this is an updated agreement. This agreement has been sitting in draft since 2019, so it got skipped over during those last 2 years. The purpose of entering into the mutual aid agreements is to set the obligations of the parties and to work together should local resources be inadequate to cope with that emergency. Within our individual fire sub-agreements we have with Acme, Carbon, Linden, Trochu, and Three Hills, Section 7 allows us to enter into other mutual aid agreements council deems necessary. And response to any request is at the discretion of the authorized official of the responding party. So that would usually be the fire chiefs. No further costs associated with these mutual aid agreements, as the requesting party will reimburse any combustible, consumable material expenses. So it's not, we don't pay per truck, we pay per, so if we use foam, stuff like that. Yeah, so the agreement is attached, and our recommendation is that you approve the mutual aid agreement as presented.
So are there any questions for Ms. Grossfield regarding the mutual aid agreement with Rocky View? Councillor Penner.
So when it comes to consumables, fair enough, the foam and that, but you're not being paid for the gas to get to wherever it is for the mutual aid. It's just strictly the consumables.
Correct.
Any other questions? If not, would someone care to make a motion? We need a motion to approve the fire service mutual aid agreement. Councillor Penner.
I'll make the motion that council approve the fire service mutual aid agreement with Rocky View County as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve as presented. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So then we'll move on to 5.3.3, 2022 capital equipment purchasing. And Mr. Gannon, you're presenting, I assume. Welcome, and whenever you're ready. Just remind you to use your microphone, if you would, please. Yeah.
Good morning, Chair and Council. Thank you very much. Today, we're looking that Council approve the amended capital equipment replacement of the Three Hills tender. for an amount not to exceed $575,000, and furthermore, that the equipment is to be funded through the Municipal Sustainable Funding, MSI. Now, this project's been an interesting one. Procuring vehicles through COVID has been a challenge, to say the least, for ourselves and other municipalities. This transfer of equipment, unfortunately, our project sheet did not match the budget sheet, and there showed a shortfall of $100,000 when we looked at the price of the final tag. There was also a deposit made the year prior in 2021, which we had to create a new process to try to capture these differences that we had. And unfortunately, the process did not bode well. So we've looked back on that. We've recognized where those errors were, and we've worked with finance to make sure that to prevent any further potential issues with this. Fortunately, the one good news story about this is that we were able to recognize that the MSI funding was an opportunity for us to fund the entire vehicle, which wasn't recognized in 2021. So this allows our reserves to stay in fairly good shape and not have to endure that cost. So at this time, does council have any questions for me?
So are there any questions? I guess I would have just a point of clarification. So what did we actually include in the budget? Was it 325 or 425?
The budget through the chair, so the cost of the vehicle, total cost was $575,000, not to exceed that. What was put in the budget was $475,000.
Oh, okay, okay. Right. Everybody understands what's happening and why we need to do this? Are there any further questions? If not, would somebody care to make a motion? Councillor McGee.
I'd like to move that we approve the capital equipment replacement of the Three Hills tender for an amount not to exceed $575,000, and furthermore, that the equipment is to be funded through the Municipal Sustainable Funding.
Okay, any further discussion? Councillor Penner.
Just for clarification too, when it comes to MSI funding, you purchase the item and then you apply. Is that how MSI funding works? Maybe.
Kevin, I can.
Mr. Hogan?
Through Mr. Chair, to Councillor Penner, Municipal Sustainability Initiative funding is, as Council's aware, is a long-standing grant program the province has had. In the last, I'd say, year or 2 years, I believe 2 years, the province altered that program slightly in terms, well, they did a number of things to it in terms of funding levels and that. But administratively, they altered it so that they would not release funding until a project had been undertaken for that funding. So in years past, it was, here's your yearly amount and you got the money. What the province did as part of their fiscal restraint is they said, we're not releasing the money until you have a project for it. So it doesn't necessarily need to be that the apparatus is in the hall or anything like that, but there's a slight change there where we don't have the money sitting in our account unless we're undertaking a project for which it's going to be spent.
Thank you for that clarification, and just further clarification for my sake. So the entire 575 will be funded through MSI. None of it will come out of our capital equipment plan.
That's correct, Your Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're clear. Any further questions? If not, we have a motion to approve the amended capital equipment replacement of the Three Hills tender for an amount not to exceed the $575,000, and furthermore that equipment be funded through the Municipal Sustainable Funding or MSI grant. Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Gannon. We appreciate your time. Okay. We are moving on then to 7.1, Bylaw 1859, repeal of obsolete bylaws. So who's handling that one? So, Mr. Hogan, are you going to take this one then?
That's a clever tactic
Boy,
to put yourself down as the presenter.
That's a
and then-
reversal
and then
of
go on
roles.
holidays. Yeah.
And Mary Lou, that was very well handled.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to council, as you saw a meeting ago, is we started a process of going through a number of our old bylaws dating back to the origins of the county and looking to see what actually needs to be on the books and what has served its purpose and can come off. So in large part, this is a house cleaning that we're going through, and instead of having thousands of active bylaws, starting to weed them down, and if we don't need it, then taking it off the books. Again, as council's aware, the only way that you can amend, change, or rescind a bylaw is through another bylaw. And so what's in front of you is a new bylaw proposing that we get rid of 10 other bylaws. And such is the process. So if I'm not going to go through each of the bylaws independently. I think there's a summary in the request for decision. If there's any questions that council has around those, then we can dig into them. But you'll see that the trend from the previous meeting has continued in terms of these dealing with old land purchases, gravel leases, and stuff like that. As Ms. Vanderkoel has taken us, continued our journey through the 1950s.
So this is kind of back to the past instead of the future, and a repeal of a bunch of old bylaws. Are there any questions related to what we're doing here? Councillor Penner.
Just wondering if we could get transportation to look into finding some 10-cent a cubic yard gravel, please? It would be very handy for the budget.
It's amazing how things have changed, eh? Not necessarily for the better. Yeah. So any further questions on the bylaws that we are repealing or the process that we're engaged in here?
So if there's
Councillor Penner?
If there is none, I'll make the motion that council give first reading to bylaw 1859, that being a bylaw to repeal obsolete, redundant, and outdated bylaws.
Okay, we have a motion to give first reading to bylaw 1859, that being a bylaw to repeal obsolete, redundant, and outdated bylaws. Any further discussion? Councillor Christie.
Should that say as listed in Schedule A?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe that we need that in there because what you're actually approving is bylaw 1859, which does outline the list.
So bylaw 1859 does list the bylaws to be repealed. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, I'll ask the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Councillor Christie.
I'll move second reading of bylaw 1859.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve second reading of bylaw 1859. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that is also carried unanimously. Councillor McGee.
I move that council provide unanimous consent for third and final reading to bylaw 1859.
Okay, so we have a motion that council provide unanimous consent for third reading and final reading to bylaw 1859. All those in favor? And that is also carried unanimously. We have one more motion then. Councillor Forbes.
I'll move that council provide the third reading to bylaw 1859.
Okay. So you do realize this will be the end of that 10-cent gravel once we get this. All right, so we have a motion to approve third reading to bylaw 1859. All those in favor? And that is also carried unanimously, so thank you. Some of that history is kind of fun to revisit, isn't it? All right, moving on in our agenda to 7.2, Kneehill 4-H sponsorship. And that is being taken by you, Mr. Hogan, if you would, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to council. The item that's before you is a request we've received from the Kneehill 4-H Multi-Club. It's a sponsorship request for what is becoming an annual event, is their archery camp. This is a youth initiative, and so administration does feel that it aligns with council's previous discussion, strategic plan, and fits the budget funding that council puts in each year for events like this. And that, of course, falling under Policy 15.7. With that, it's above the threshold that I can approve, and so we're asking for council's consideration to provide sponsorship to the Kneehill 4-H Multi-Club for their archery event.
Okay, any questions, comments? Councillor McGee.
I just wanted to comment that I attended last year just as a visitor and was asked to address the group as well as counselor, kind of spontaneously, and it was an excellent group of kids who really could hear and appreciate where this funding came from, but also the success of that program is quite remarkable. One of the students that are, or one of their members who is active locally here has gone to nationals and done very well there as well. So we're getting some really neat results from the sponsorship.
Good, so a little bit of impromptu 4-H speaking you had to do.
I did. Luckily, I was a 4-H'er, so I knew what that was.
Good. Any other question or comment? So we have a request to sponsor. So what's council's wishes? Councillor McGee.
I should have just made the motion to approve sponsoring the Kneehill 4-H Multi-Club at the amount of $500 to help with costs of hosting the archery camp at Carbon.
Okay. So we do have a motion to provide sponsorship to the Kneehill 4-H Multi-Club in the amount of $500 to help cover costs of hosting the 4-H archery camp in Carbon. Been a very successful program, I think, for the village there and for 4-H. So, okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. 7.3, Three Hills Discovery Night. So Three Hills 2022 FCSS Community Discovery Night. And Mr. Hogan, you are presenting.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. This is an annual event that takes place in the community. FCSS is the lead on this event, and largely they're pulling a lot of different groups and services from the community together for I'll use the term trade show type event, where individuals from the community can come in and see different programs available, different supports available, all those types of things. The county traditionally has had a table at this event, and unless council directs us otherwise, we're anticipating that we will again. In the past, one or more members of council have generally been at that table as well to talk with, to answer questions the community may have, or just to talk about the county, those sorts of activities. So if council's looking to do that again, all we'd need to do is really just accept this as for information, but the follow-up for council's administration is determining who actually is available or might want to attend.
Okay, thank you. So this is to be held on September 7th in the Three Hills Curling Club, and in the past we have really said if you wanted to attend you could, but it's part of your responsibility as a counselor and so you weren't being reimbursed for it. So, are there people who would like to attend? I guess it's open to all of us as council if you choose. We like to have some guaranteed, I guess, representation there, so. Councillor Cunningham.
I'm happy to attend the event on September 7th.
Okay, Councillor Cunningham.
Just a
Councillor
question, somebody might clarify, are we doing it in the other communities? Is FCSS doing it in the other communities this year? Has anybody heard? It's funny that we've just received one letter here from one community.
Go ahead, Mr. Hogan.
This is through Mr. Chair. I haven't seen any other correspondence that they are, so I can't give you a definitive yes or no to that. I would need to follow up on it.
Councillor McGee.
I also think we may not have got information on that because that's usually in March for those other communities. This is the only one at this time of the year, so.
I can't imagine that FCSS and Ms. Jackson aren't planning these other events. I know that they're usually quite a feature. Troches often ends up in their flapjack fiesta that they have in the fall as well. I think we will see more requests coming, so. All right, so just so you're aware that you can attend, Councillor Cunningham has said she would be there. It'll likely end up on my calendar as well. Just, I kind of like seeing what's happening, so. Okay, so we need a motion to receive for information, and Councillor Penner.
Thanks for putting your names forward, and now it's open to all of us, but I'd make the motion that council receive for information the Three Hills Community Discovery Night report or.
Okay. So, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the question. All those in favor? Okay. And I'm going to suggest that we take a 10-minute recess. And so we are adjourned and we'll return at 9:40.
the intention of this agreement, but it also gives the group now, because they'll be independent, the opportunity to make amendments or changes if they have reason to do that, and that their councils then approve those changes. So we're starting with the core necessary piece. Anything beyond that, that would be something they would have to, this group would have to put together and then request of their councils to approve.
If I
Go
may.
ahead, Mr. Hogan.
To you, Deputy Reeve King, to part of that as well, when the KRP looked at this, is they did bring the composition of the task force and its voting members primarily to the municipal elected officials. And that was done as they are the funding partners, so it was felt that the vote should follow the funding. It was also done in response to some of the existing operations of the committee where there were opportunities for conflicts of interest to arise on some of the matters. And so they clarified that, they clarified the voting with the external community members, while they'd no longer be a part of the formal group, under working groups and subcommittees, there is the opportunity there that if the medical retention and recruitment task force did create a subcommittee, the terms of reference anticipates that they can really appoint whomever they deem necessary or fit to that subcommittee. So if you have an entity like Seniors Outreach, who is part of the current group but is not part of the proposed future group, they're not part of that main one, but they could still be appointed or play a role on any subcommittees that group would create. And so under the existing one, I think there were primarily two subcommittees, the retention subcommittee and the recruitment subcommittee. This terms of reference puts a little bit more structure to those by indicating that it's up to the group to create their subcommittees as they see fit, but those have to be done in writing so that there's a clear mandate, who's on them, what are they to do, that sort of thing. And then the following line, external stakeholders may be appointed to working groups and subcommittees by the task force. And so they don't need to come back to as an entity, say like Seniors Outreach. That new task force would not need to come back to the councils asking for permission to have them take part in a subcommittee. The councils are basically saying, no, the task force can figure out that themselves.
Okay. Any other questions? No further discussion? Okay. So what is our wish? Councillor Christie.
I'll make the motion that council approve the medical service retention and recruitment agreement as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the medical services retention and recruitment agreement as presented. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to 7.5, Minister of Municipal Affairs meeting request. And again, Mr. Hogan, if you would, please. Okay, any question or comment? Okay, if not, what's our wish? Councillor Cunningham?
Sorry, I guess I do have a comment. I guess whenever, I know we don't want to do this all the time, but I know we did decline the invitation in the spring, when we have a chance to meet with the minister. I know we don't get that opportunity very often, so I would love to see us accept the invitation at this time.
I guess just in follow-up with Mr. Hogan's comments, usually we would need something that we would want to be addressing with the minister, and so we would want to have a purpose for why we would meet with him. And I guess that would be the question I would ask of you, Councillor Cunningham, you know, if you're thinking about what it would be that we would put on the agenda that we'd want to bring forward to talk with the minister about if we were going to accept an invitation.
Yeah, so I know on the advice of council last time, did have the opportunity at the hospitality suite. Actually, Minister McIver actually came up to me and asked me, as a new councillor, any concerns that I had. So we did have a quick discussion over a few points that are under his department. And he said he was definitely interested in speaking further. Of course, that's not the opportunity to do that. So to me, that would just be a good opportunity come this fall to discuss a few things further with him.
Councillor Penner?
I guess we have to let them know in what areas, what would you like to speak? They need to know, you know what I mean?
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, and actually, I think if we look at Minister McGovern's, you know, what he takes care of when we look at land compensation board, surface rates, I mean, I think everyone around the table has had a lot of concerns over those issues. I think 15 minutes, actually, we'd have to really tone things down. I know him and I did have a quick discussion over the AUC and concerns over rural versus urban issues on public participation policies. So those were just a few of the points that I think there'd definitely be issues to speak with him about, but it's up to council.
Okay, any further comment, discussion? Not everyone speak at once. Okay, so again, I guess my question would be, what is the wish of council? Do we wish to accept an invitation? Do we wish to just receive for information? I would need a motion to go forward. Mr. Hogan?
I think if council is wishing to accept or to request a meeting, because again, we'll make the request, there's no guarantee that we'll get the time. But
Right.
if council wants to make the request, then the motion simply read that direct administration to seek a meeting with the Minister of Municipal Affairs at the RMA convention to address the following points, and then we'd need some specificity to what council was bringing forward.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I think we realize that if we're going to request a meeting with the minister, we need to be very focused in what we're going to be addressing with him. And in light of the 15 minutes, that's a very brief time frame. So, Councillor Christie.
It'd be really interesting to know post-leadership convention, who's where. Like, what are we requesting and from who?
I guess the issue would be is municipal affairs is still responsible for specific areas of dealing with us, and whoever is the minister still has the responsibility, whether it's Mr. McIver or whoever happens to be there. We still, yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be the Honorable Rick McIver who's the minister, right? So. Mr. Hogan.
As council is going through this, one of the suggestions or the I guess the questions that administration is going to have when we respond to this, you know, I used the word specificity before around what is it that council is wishing to approach the minister about, or what is the outcome that council is looking for, and that's part of what I would suggest that council needs to clarify, so that it is a council initiative to bring those things forward. Because if I go to the minister as an example, or the department, and I say we'd like to meet around landowner engagements regarding development, they're absolutely going to ask for further clarification or discussion. And what I want to make sure that administratively we're putting forward is what council's standpoint on that is.
So I guess, just as a comment, I know we had this conversation prior to the spring convention, and we're having it again here. And I recognize, Councillor Cunningham, that you have a desire to move some of these things forward in terms of a conversation with the minister. And we are responsible to respond by August the 10th. Would it be reasonable to suggest that we set ourselves up for the spring convention and that you bring to council very specific things that you think we might want to address with the minister? Like, to me, we're fishing right now to put something together, or do we want to come back to this in some other format before the 10th of August via council communication through email, or I'm not sure. Councillor Penner.
Or is there one Pacific area? We can visit with them both times. Is there one Pacific area or one more important right now than another that you would really like us to discuss with them?
I definitely have the issues that I'd like to discuss them, but obviously that has to be the, decision of council. So maybe it would be a great opportunity for us, I don't know if we, like you said, by email to have a quick discussion, maybe about some issues that everybody else is having. Like I said, I know I had a call this week about surface rates. I mean, it's a hot topic right now. 15 minutes, like we said, is not going to be hard to fill with Minister McIver, but maybe it would be a good discussion among council to find out what, maybe our top one or two priorities would be for questions for him. Don't want it just to be my questions, but just wondering if anybody else has questions as well.
Well, I guess just as a comment, again, that's my concern, is that we always seem to come up to this point and we haven't prepped ourselves for it. We haven't prepared ourselves to have this conversation. So perhaps we need to formalize a discussion about what kind of things that we would like to take to the Minister of Municipal Affairs. And maybe the timeline to meet is not this fall one, but maybe the spring one, unless we can come up with a more defined topic that we'd like to discuss. And I guess I guess in a way, as a council, we should apologize for not having had that conversation prior to this point. And so, Councillor Cunningham, I recognize that you did bring this forward earlier. And so my encouragement to you would be not to let it drop, but to keep it on the agenda of council so that we are prepared to have a conversation. If that's acceptable to you, I don't know, or do you really want to try to push for a fall meeting?
Well, again, it's the will of council, right? So it's up to everybody, but we did have that discussion in the spring and it was talked about, let's bring it back in the fall. So I just, sometimes it feels like things are always getting put off to the next time, so. But I obviously, Mr. McIver did leave that door open for me to speak with him personally, so there's that opportunity as well for me to do that.
Yeah. Councillor Penner.
One thing that I find really important with our conventions is we should make sure we have something for the bear patch at all times. There's always, so maybe if we don't meet with the minister this time, but we could have something to ask questions in the bear patch to make sure that we participate in that way too.
Are you referring to the minister forum? It is a bit of a bear pit at times, right? Okay. So what's council's wishes at this point in time? Councillor Christie.
I guess my concern, a one-on-one with the minister is fine, but a proper question in the minister's forum gets all councils involved, not just ours. and I think at times carries more weight than a one-on-one visitation.
Counselor Cunningham.
So I guess if, like, I'm amendable to saying, let's pass for this time, let's do it this spring, but could we maybe make a decision to maybe, like what Councillor Penner said, to get some of those questions together so we are prepared for the ministerial forum? Because there, like, I noticed in the spring, there was a lot of other counties that were asking questions, and I feel that we're missing the chance with that, for sure.
Okay, so would it be acceptable then, Counselor Cunningham, if we make the motion to receive this as information, and then maybe we could direct administration to bring back to a committee of the whole meeting a more fulsome discussion regarding concerns that we might like to bring forward, not necessarily just to the Minister of Municipal Affairs, but possibly other ministers. Would that be appropriate? So maybe we make two motions here. One, receiving this for information, so basically taking a pass for this convention, and then having a more fulsome discussion perhaps in maybe September, so that we get ourselves set up for perhaps a ministers' forum and or a meeting in the spring convention with one or more ministers if we wish. Would that be reasonable? Mr. Hogan, does that seem like a logical approach to you?
It does, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So what we'll look for here is two motions, one to receive for information, and the second then to direct administration to bring back to a committee of the whole. I'm suggesting perhaps September might be a good time if that's appropriate. Everybody's okay with that? Councillor Cunningham, would that be acceptable? Okay. All right. So I'm looking for two motions then. First, to receive for information, I guess. Councillor McGee.
I move that we accept our invitation as information.
Okay. So we have a motion to receive for information. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. So Councillor Cunningham, would you like to make that second motion?
Move closer to the screen.
Sorry to put you on the
No
spot.
problem, no. Get my glasses going here. So I'll move that administration bring back the discussion to the committee of the whole.
Okay, so this discussion that we're bringing back is municipal concerns that we'd like to take either to the minister forum or to a minister specifically and directly. Okay? And I think you understand the direction that we're asking for. Okay. So I don't think we need to clarify that any further. Do you want further clarification, Mr. Hogan, or not?
I think in the proposed motion itself, we should add a little bit of wording. Move that administration, and then we can say that Councillor Cunningham direct administration, or move that council direct administration. And I will say, I'm not sure about bring back, but
the minister concern discussion.
yeah, and then that way, what that does is anybody reading the minutes has a more clear understanding of what discussion you've directed us to bring back.
Yeah, bring back the,
Topics of possible ministerial concern.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring, and just move the minister thing. Bring back the topics, so take the minister out of there. Bring back the topics of ministerial concern, discussion, to the committee of the whole. Discussion, just add discussion in there. To the committee of the whole. So Councillor Cunningham, is that amendment agreeable to you?
Yeah, that looks great, thank you.
So now we know exactly what we're bringing back. Mr. Hogan, that's okay?
It is.
Okay, we all understand what we're talking about. And I think this will then allow us to perhaps have questions prepared for the Minister Forum at the Fall Convention, and would also set us up to potentially meet individually as a municipality with one or more ministers in the spring convention. All right, that addresses, I think, the issue. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, we are moving on to 7.6, which is Alberta Municipal Taxation Professionals Association. And Mr. Hogan, if you would please.
Through the chair to all of council. The request that has come in is from the Alberta Municipal Taxation Professionals Association. So this is a relatively new association within the province that has been formed or put together with the individuals from municipalities who specialize in taxation. And our own tax department was one of the founding or the initial pieces in putting this group together. And so they're looking to have their first in-person conference coming up. Ideally, for this group, this would be a yearly convention that they would hold, as well as they get programs and things underneath them to encourage training, to encourage knowledge sharing within those levels, within that, not level's the wrong word, within that, within those types of administrative components within municipalities. We've seen ourselves in dealing with the last few years of unpaid oil and gas taxes, the approach we've taken to that, sometimes soft, sometimes not, in terms of chasing that down or working with other municipalities to affect some outcomes. But this is, the group is asking if council would consider providing sponsorship to help get their first convention off the ground. Administratively, if council chooses to provide this, we do have some funding. For the amount of $500, we can find that funding within the operating budget, should council wish to consider this.
Okay, so I guess this would be an opportunity for us to encourage one of our own employees who has done an amazing job for us, Ms. Severson, and our taxation department. What's the wish of council? Councillor McGee.
I strongly feel the more we can participate in these regional events, the better we are as a county ourselves, and it's a really pertinent piece, of course, taxation. So I would like to move that council authorize sponsorship of the Alberta Municipal Taxation Professionals Association Conference in the amount of $500 with funds to come from the 2022 operating budget.
Okay, thank you for the motion. Any further discussion? Any comment, questions, or discussion? I think I agree with the philosophy that we want to encourage and help our employees move forward in their responsibilities and in training, and this is a good way of doing that. Okay, no further discussion. I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, unanimously. Okay. Our next item of business is 8.1, which is Bylaw 1857. Is that right? No, it's not, sorry. 1808, yes. So, request to amend the Land Use Bylaw 1808, which is then becomes bylaw, proposed Bylaw 1857. So who's taking this one? 8.1. Miss Hay Morgan is back again. You want to move up to the center of attention and maybe get some
warmer up here.
get some heat attached?
That doesn't mean you have to.
So whenever you're ready, Brandy, if you
Okay.
would, please.
This was the public hearing that we had earlier today. Extreme Capital, Inc. is the current landowner of the Southeast 223025, Plan 0112534, Block A, Lot 1, and they recently purchased the property in February of 2022. The parcel was purchased by the new owners with the impression that the lands were already zoned commercial with the industrial use. This was not the case, and so they're just wanting to align it with the use that's on the property. The proposed site is located approximately 2.5 miles southeast of the village of Linden as the crow flies. The site is accessed via Range Road 252 and is 0.5 miles south of Township 304. The applicants currently store their business products, which are concrete forms, in one bay and are looking to lease the other 3 bays to other businesses for warehousing purposes. As discussed in the public hearing, the uses for the light industrial would be permitted and discretionary or attached to the report. And that is it for me, other than your council options.
Okay, thank you very much. So this relates to the public hearing we had earlier this morning. And it's our opportunity to basically redesignate from agriculture to light industrial district. So we would need second and third reading of proposed bylaw 1857. Councillor Christie.
I'll move second reading of proposed bylaw 1857.
Okay, so Councillor Christie has moved that council provide second reading of proposed bylaw 1857 for the purpose of amending land use bylaw 1808 by redesignating a portion of Southeast 2230-25 west of 4 from agriculture district to light industrial district. Okay, we all understand what's happening here. Any questions, discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimous. Thank you. And we would need one other motion. Councillor Penner.
I'll make the motion that council give third reading to the proposed bylaw 1857.
Okay, so we have a motion for third reading of proposed bylaw 1857. Any discussion? Nope. All those in favor? And that is also carried unanimously. Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Hay Morgan. All right, we are at 9.1. Council, or 9.0, council and committee reports, and 9.1 would be Kneehill Housing Corporation, and we have actually a written report here, so thank you to Councillor Phobes and Cunningham for their written contribution. Anything you would like to add? Councillor Cunningham.
Carolyn Vanderkool does have the copies of the financials for the past year, if any member would like to have a copy of that.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing nothing further, we'll go on to 9.2, which is a verbal report on terms of what's happening with FCSS. So just to let you know, if you haven't already received it, Mr. Hogan, you soon should be seeing a requisition from FCSS for this year's municipal contribution. And to let council know that our the 2 family wellness workers and our community coach, I guess I'll call her, Michaela, they're busy. Even though school's out, they are quite busy. And they have lots to do. And so we're very thankful for them, and our administrative assistant and our director are not just standing still either. So Shelley took a well-needed few weeks and had a vacation, which we encouraged very much for mental health and well-being. But FCS programming is ongoing and they are busy, so just so you know. And that's about all. Any questions on FCSS? Counselor McGee.
I just wanted to give accolades. I know one of the volunteers that is helping the community coach with her summer programming. It is hugely successful, and she's very skilled, and the outcomes have been quite impressive according to this volunteer.
Yeah, thank you. I know we're very happy with our new employee, and she has been doing good work on our behalf, so. Okay, any other comments? If not, just a brief update on Trochu Housing. Councillor Christie and myself attended the Trochu Housing meeting yesterday afternoon, and they're still in a major holding pattern. And with things that are happening at the leadership level with the province and all the confusion that's happening at AHS right now, really not much is happening. And so basically Trochu Housing Corporation is just prepared and ready, and the minute there's a call for proposals for funding, they're ready to go. But until that happens, nothing else can happen. So, so it's just really, it's frustrating to sit there and every meeting go, maybe next time, maybe next time, maybe next time. And all the conversation that goes on with people like Nathan Cooper, our MLA, and others, it's all very favorable, but until they actually request those proposals, nothing can happen. And it's been a long process for the town of Trochu and for the Trochu Housing Corporation people, and I think they're feeling a little jaded, maybe. However, they're very optimistic and hopeful still. So, so that's Councillor Christie. Did you want to add anything?
I guess the only thing that they commented is the last meeting with Covenant Health is they seem to have more participation involvement. They're, okay, let's go. So one of the comments was that Covenant Health has almost got the same stature at the provincial government as AHS. So maybe there's something behind the scenes that's happening, but we don't know. Like we're just still, they're saying the 1st of August, maybe the 1st of September, but they said that in June. So, but it seemed to be more engaged at that Covenant Health level. So
Yeah.
they're more optimistic maybe, but we're grasping at straws, I think.
Councillor Cunningham.
That kind of answers my questions, but I was at a town hall meeting that Mr. Cooper had hosted here in Three Hills, and he kind of alluded to the fact that a decision would be coming in the following months, but obviously that hasn't happened then. Which months of which year? Fair, yeah.
Yeah, how many months following, right? So I think that like the enthusiasm at the corporation, Trochu Housing Corporation level, they're still enthused about what needs to happen. They're just, I mean, they're like everybody, let's, you know, like, let's just get going. And so they're really looking forward to having that proposal call and getting an opportunity to get an answer from the provincial government, so. All right, anything else for council and committee reports? Councillor Christie.
Just a quick comment on the Wimborne lawnmower races. That was a well-attended community function, and I really want to thank the Parks Department for bending over backwards to make sure we got mowed up the day before, so thank you very much for that.
Okay. And Councillor Cunningham.
I'll just make a quick comment too, that I was able to attend the Three Hills Parade this past Saturday, and peace officers were there as well, and yeah, it was a really good parade and looked like it was really well attended, so.
Good, good. All right. So, if nothing else, would someone care to accept as presented? Councillor Forbes.
I'll accept as presented.
Okay. So we have a motion to receive the council and committee reports as presented. All those in favor? And that is carried. And then we're at 10.0, which is council follow-up action list. So the follow-up action list is there in front of you. Any questions, concerns? Councillor McGee.
Thank you. I would just like to hear a follow-up on, were we able to get merchandise for the Horseshoe Canyon in such time that we could utilize it this year, or are we waiting for the coming year? Like, did we, by coincidence, actually get it faster than we expected? Not that we asked for that.
Thank you for the question. I talked to the manager involved, and there is some product that actually is being sold by the campground right near Horseshoe Canyon right now as a pilot project. Once we can determine how well that comes, we will be coming back with council on where we've seen successes and where we could look at some improvements and how we plan on displaying or potentially selling it further.
Okay, thank you for that update. Any further questions? Councillor Cunningham.
Just me again. So just had a couple ratepayers ask if we have a meeting date yet for the more information on the East Water project potential.
Mr. Hogan, are you tackling that one?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, there's no date for the public meeting on that yet. That date will not be set until council has their discussions as to what that engagement is actually going to be. And I believe that we're targeting that for an upcoming committee of the whole. Yeah.
Okay, so that'll be on a committee of the whole agenda, and then after that, we'll establish a meeting date. So the goal is still this fall? Is that the goal, or that'll be at the direction of council after that committee of the whole meeting?
Yeah, I think that'll be the direction of council. Administratively, we know that council wants to move this forward in a capacity. So I believe, and I'll defer to Mike Zier, is we're working on some of that modeling or what some of those things might actually look at and or might actually look like, as well as if we're going to propose something to council, if there's broader impacts beyond that. So I'll use the example of if you determine that a riser is going to be a particular cost in the system east, does that trigger a discussion about should it be that cost in the rest of the county as well? And we probably want to have an idea of that before we go out to the public saying what that's going to look like. Right?
Okay,
So there'll be,
sorry.
so there'll be some items like that you know, I don't know, Mike and I have to touch base on this again. I don't know if there's necessarily going to be an answer at that meeting, but at least it's out there for identification that council knows if we go this route, we may have to give some thought to these other routes before we go as well.
So I guess the question I would have is, are we anticipating seeing that at the first available committee of the whole meeting, which would be September? Mr. Zier, welcome.
Good morning. Yeah, through the chair, that is the intent to have September 20th Committee of the Whole. We have had some preliminary meetings even after this, obviously, just setting the benchmarks, the overall parameters of what we're bringing back to council for the options. You saw many of them at that council meeting, and we're just going to tighten them up a little bit here with some firmer figures to bring back for everyone to discuss.
Okay. So Councillor Cunningham, does that?
So, yeah, and of course, we all know fall is not a great time for a meeting. So I could probably probably looking at early winter before there's, yeah.
Through the chair, yeah, if that's what council decides after that, we can hold the meeting whatever works. We can, if council chooses to hold multiple meetings. It really is up to the direction of council on this one.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zier. Any further questions? If not, I'd look for a motion to receive. Councillor Christie.
I move to receive the follow-up action list as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion to receive the follow-up action list as presented. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to the end of the open portion of our meeting. We have some discussion that needs to be held in closed session related to personnel, FOIP section 17. So I would entertain a motion to Do we need a break before we do that? Are we good? We're good? Okay. Someone care to make a motion to put us into closed session then? Counselor Forbes?
I'll move us to closed session.
Okay, so we have a motion to go into closed session. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. So